In the dark Arizona forest, a logging crew stopped when a bright object hovered above the trees, silent and close enough to make the men stare upward in disbelief. Minutes later, one of them was gone. So what happened in that clearing? This happened in November 1975, near Snowflake and Heber in the Apache-Sitgreaves region, where timber work meant long drives, cold air, and isolated roads beneath a huge western sky. It was the kind of place where a strange light could feel impossibly close. The crew was part of a timber contract, a small group of men used to rough terrain and hard schedules, not to mysteries. Their routine mattered because the case begins as an ordinary workday that suddenly slips beyond ordinary explanation. Among them was Travis Walton, a young logger whose sudden disappearance would become one of the most argued cases in modern UFO history. Before that night ended, several witnesses claimed they had seen a glowing craft and a violent burst of light. The first strange detail is how the encounter unfolded. The men said the object did not streak away like a plane or helicopter, but held position with an eerie stillness. In the woods, that kind of silence can feel louder than any engine. Then came the moment that changed everything. According to the crew, Walton stepped toward the light, a flash erupted, and the others fled in panic, leaving the road behind them as if they had just witnessed something impossible. They did not return to a calm report the next day. They returned shaken, exhausted, and certain that one man had been left behind. That detail matters because the story was not built from a single witness, but from a group trying to describe the same terrifying minutes. Search teams swept the area, and the missing logger became the center of a widening local and national fascination. In a case like this, the silence after the event is almost as important as the event itself. For 5 days, there was no confirmed sign of him, and that absence fed both dread and speculation. Then Walton reappeared, disoriented and alive, carrying the case from a missing person mystery into something far stranger. His return did not close the case, it opened it. Walton later described being taken aboard a craft, examined by beings he could barely understand, and then returned to Earth after an experience that felt outside normal time. That account became the emotional center of the story, but the strongest public case still begins with the witnesses on the road. Their descriptions of the light, the soundless approach, and the panic in the truck are what keep the event alive. Supporters of the claim point to the consistency of the crew's immediate reactions, arguing that frightened men do not invent the same sequence under pressure. Whether the explanation is extraordinary or not, the fear in their voices remains part of the record. The case gained another layer when interviews and retellings preserved the same central outline over time: a hovering light, a sudden flash, a missing crew member, and a return days later. That structure is simple, but it is hard to ignore. What makes the story linger is not only the disappearance, but the setting itself. Remote timber country offers few witnesses, few landmarks, and almost no immediate certainty when something unusual happens under the trees. The crew's account also included a sense of physical force, as if the encounter had a pressure to it, rather than just a visual oddity. In cases like this, the body's memory can be as compelling as the eyes. Walton's later descriptions added details that believers still return to: a clinical environment, unusual beings, and a feeling that he had been observed rather than attacked. Those images gave the case a human center, not just a skyward one. At the same time, the case drew skepticism because extraordinary stories invite hard questions. Could stress, confusion, or later embellishment have shaped what the crew thought they saw in those first frantic minutes? That is where the alternative readings begin, and they deserve space. Some researchers have suggested misidentification, atmospheric effects, or a chain of panic that transformed an unexplained light into a larger narrative. Others have pointed to the practical pressures around the case, including the isolation of the worksite and the emotional strain on a crew already living on tight schedules. Under those conditions, perception can become unstable very quickly. Still, the timing remains difficult to dismiss. The witnesses described a sudden sequence of light, flight, and absence that unfolded fast enough to leave little room for neat explanation in the moment. The 5-day gap is another reason the case never settled into a simple story. A missing man can be searched for, but a missing man who returns with a detailed, extraordinary account changes the emotional stakes completely. In the years that followed, the case became a touchstone for people who believe some encounters are not just lights in the sky, but contact events with lasting human consequences. Walton's story kept that possibility alive for a wider public. What gives the episode its power is the collision between the ordinary and the impossible. A logging crew, a remote road, a bright object, and then a missing man, each piece is mundane until they are placed in sequence. Even now, the strongest question is not whether the story is dramatic, but whether every part of it can be reduced to stress and confusion. The witness's certainty, however imperfect, keeps pushing the mystery back into the open. And yet the conventional possibilities remain on the table: a misread light, a frightened retreat, a missing worker, and a later account shaped by memory and attention. That reading explains some edges, but not the full emotional weight. The case also survives because it sits in a larger pattern of sky mysteries that begin with witnesses on the ground and end with questions no report can fully settle. Here, the ground itself feels like part of the evidence. If something truly happened that night, it would have happened fast, in confusion, under a bright and unfamiliar light. That is exactly why the story remains so difficult. The most important moment may have lasted only seconds. Walton's return gave the public a human face for the unknown, but it also left behind a deeper unease. People can explain a sighting, or a disappearance, or a story told later, yet this case asks us to hold all three at once. That is why the Travis Walton case still matters decades later. It is not only about what was seen in the sky, but about what can happen when a small group of witnesses encounters something that seems to break the rules of the world they know. The most cautious reading says the event was a combination of fear, misperception, and a missing man who later told a remarkable story. The more extraordinary reading says the woods witnessed a genuine encounter that still resists full explanation. Between those possibilities lies the unresolved center of the case. A crew saw something they could not make sense of. One man vanished, and the return did not close the mystery, it deepened it. So the question remains open. Was this a rare and misunderstood human event, or one of the clearest modern encounters ever reported from the wilderness? The answer still seems to hover just beyond the trees.